Today's guest is Carlos Velasco, an
Oh,
associate creative director in social at TBWA, with a background across Praytel, Gray, Edelman, Twitter's Creative Lab. He spent his career working on ideas designed to move through culture, not just sit in a deck, across brands like P&G and eBay. So today we're getting into what it really takes to create work that cuts through, especially in a social first world. Carlos, welcome to Fully Managed.
hi. Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you. Thank you.
So let's begin. Like you have said, that the best work isn't the most polished, it's the thinking
hmm
behind it. So when you look at an idea early on, what tells you like this could be famous versus this is just good?
Oh my God. Yeah, I think that's such a great question. Actually, to start that off, you mentioned something that I love a lot, which is this notion of famous work. So I do want to drop the anecdote here of, my very first day working in advertising. I was at FCB, and it was my partner and I went to our creative director's room, the incredibly amazing Gabriel Schmidt, who's currently at Gray, actually. And we asked him, "What do you expect from us?" And he said, "To make famous shit." Which, like, coming from my background before, I was like, "Oh my God!" Like that just felt unreal. And it was this world all of a sudden that opened up in my eyes of like to make famous work back then was like this opening, this like invitation to create ideas without limits and to do that. And so I think that like through the years, really working across a lot of different sort of parts of the industry, something that I look at when there's like nuggets of ideas or write
Mhm.
ups or things in decks is, like I think that the most important thing for me is what's the why? What's the reason behind it? What's the cultural tension? Is there sort of a truth, an undeniable truth? And the beauty of great ideas, I think, comes in, you know, I think oftentimes simplest is best. And I think oftentimes it's sort of this notion of like an idea that feels almost just like undeniable. And you see it, even if it's a rough sketch on a napkin, like old school, or even if it's just like, three little words on the page. And you can tell when that has some leg to it and when it has
Yeah,
something that can grow. And I think that I often honestly invite having more of those little thought starters, little sentences on a page versus fully fleshed out things, because you can always start to pick up on like where there's something really special.
I love that. And do you have like a notebook or like a sketch pad or something that you write down like your ideas or pops that ideas that pop
Ooh,
up in the day?
honestly, I need to be better at that. What I sometimes do, if I have like something like of an idea that I'll just like put it in my notes app. What I used to do actually for about like 6 months or so, and then I completely like lost track of it. I would write a log line a day, and writing a log line a day on my notes app was actually really beneficial for like kind of getting things condensed. And, I would take an observation from outside and write it out as like really a one sentence log line that would I think helped like condense my thinking of like how to write an idea. But yeah, I think that now for the most part, like at every job I usually have like a my little dumpster dive of like a deck with little thoughts that I put in here or there and I backlog them for like a rainy day.
I love that. The life of the creator of a
Yeah,
creative.
it never
And
ends.
yeah. And at Twitter Next, you were in the business of ideas worth talking about. So I'm
Mhm.
curious, what's one thing brands, in your opinion, consistently misunderstand about what makes people want to talk, share, and care?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, amazing question, because actually that is fundamental to what we used to do at Twitter, with this notion of ideas we're talking about. Where so I sat on Twitter Next was a creative strategy wing of Twitter, and we worked basically directly with brands that would come to us and say, "Hi, we want to activate on Twitter on the platform, and we want to connect with audiences, and we're having a hard time doing that, but we feel like you're the experts." And what we would do, and this was vital to our success. And I think what is missing a lot of times is our deep dives into culture and into communities. And why it's also why I fell in love with social a lot, actually, because I feel like when it came down to it, like, we were basically doing deep dives of if there was a community. I'll use an example of the Latin Grammys, actually, we worked on this thing for the Latin Grammys, and we ended up deep diving so much to find out that the largest consumer of Latin music is actually the deaf and hard of hearing audience. And they listen to Latin music because they actually physically feel the beat and the rhythm and it moves them. And so that led us to actually go in like this further exploration of, how can we connect with this audience that actually is the most unexpected but most likely to appreciate Latin music. And so it became this whole fun, really interesting idea in the end, that unfortunately ended up not being produced in the end. But it's like this thing where I think that there are people everywhere that like you wouldn't expect these stories to come from. And I think that sometimes, like brands will kind of just think of at a very high level audiences, but really, I think like when you start to understand like the little tiny like communities, and you start to understand like the stories and the emotional connection, I think that's when you really start to create ideas that are worth talking about, because a lot of times it's like you'll get all the data points right, but it's that emotional arc and that really like tender intimate part of humanity that gets lost in the mix.
Oh my God, that's such a cool story. And I
Yeah.
did you have to like leave preconceived notions at the door to work on it? Because it's like like so curious,
It
this thing that you discovered.
You really did, and actually that was part of the joy, and I think that's part of the joy that can come from any idea in
Yeah.
any research phase, really, is that you can enter something, and I think that, everyone always goes into something thinking, "Oh, this is a general, like, this is who the audience is probably gonna be," or something, and, with the Latin Grammy specifically, it was so cool because we started to talk with experts in that field, with a lot of researchers, with a lot of consultants that worked directly with the deaf and hard of hearing community, and started to look a lot at just how people that are in that community perceive music. And it became this thing where, like, the first few weeks working on it, we're just thinking of like the very like base level thing, like, oh, it's probably gonna like for this audience, we can do X, Y, and Z. And then all of a sudden it's like, holy crap, like, oh my gosh, we actually have the potential to unlock something that's never been unlocked before. And that's really, really incredible. And, and also to this point, I think that when you start to make those discoveries, I think that it also starts to enrich your understanding of humanity as a whole as well, because, it's a community that I had never really known much about before, but it ended up just teaching me so much about the perception of music in that case, but,
Yeah.
like the perception of creativity in all forms, really.
I love that take. That's so cool. Um and what's a hill you'll die on creatively? Like maybe the one that other people strongly disagree with. I'm
Oh my
curious.
god. Ooh, I'm gonna get in trouble. I believe very, very wholeheartedly around the notion of taste and having taste. And I think that you can learn a lot of things around skill set, technical know-how, all of those kind of things. But good taste takes time and is cultivated and is something that is really, really specific to your world and lived experiences. And I think that a lot of creatives, I think that when you start to see a lot of people kind of like, you get to the stage where you end up being a little burnt out, and you pull your inspiration mainly from like Pinterest boards or like whatever is on TikTok or etc. But, we live in such an amazing world where like living in New York, like take for instance, an average week, you could start your week off, going to the Met, and then after that you have dinner at a really acclaimed restaurant, and then all of a sudden you go to an art gallery in Chelsea, or you go to see this really interesting DJ set in Bushwick or something. Like you have all of these experiences, and they're this macrocosm of like the city, and all of those put together are informing your even just walking down the street. It's informing your taste and your sort of lexicon as well. And so I think a good like creative, and something that I personally expect a lot from creatives that I work with, is to have this sort of built-in library of references and good taste, and being able to really defend their creative decisions with really well-informed sort of references.
And going back to, what you mentioned about famous work and how on your
Yeah.
first day at an agency you were told to make famous work. So what does famous mean to you now, especially in a world where everything is competing for attention?
Oh my gosh. Well, this is a question actually I was thinking about a lot recently because I teach a class on
Mhm.
ideas at the University of Nebraska Lincoln remotely, and I talk about this notion of famous work because it's interesting. Where what does that mean now? I think back then, I talked about this. It really meant this idea of like pushing all the limits and having no boundaries and like thinking of the biggest, greatest thing. Now we're living in a very different age. Like that was 2018. And to your point, everything is 24/7 and everywhere around you. You consume millions of ads a day probably without even knowing. And I think to me, how you make famous work now, and this is very, very heady philosophical take, but you have to step beyond the kind of Warholian kind of spectrum of 15 minutes of fame because you get into this notion where like I think a lot of times you'll be okay, what's a stunt or what's a celebrity we can partner with or whatever else. And the thing about that is that sometimes it'll create some buzz, but that's about it. And it'll last 15 minutes. It's a spectacle. And I ended up learning this a lot during my years at Edelman. I was taught by the very, very genius Jeremy Bernstein over there. And he taught me all about what makes an earned idea. And what's funny is the same thing with famous work. You can't just put a spectacle out there and expect people to write about it. The media will have seen it a million times, and if there's a press release, cool. They might just take the press release and run with it after the embargo lifts, but aside from that, no one is going to talk about it. So to make famous work, I think you have to really think beyond what is out, what people already think they like have, and you have to kind of start to think, what do people not know that they need next? What does the culture not know that they need next? Like, how can you, deep dive into culture so much that you can perceive what is next almost like kind of like not even just following trends but creating the next sort of trend like this moment and like eventually the goal of a really good famous idea would be to, and I don't think I've cracked this ever in my career personally like but it's this thing of like how can you make something that like is like a lemon Volkswagen ad, like something that actually to be famous will last forever, like something that becomes like the Michael Jackson or the Marilyn Monroe of like creative, And it's a notion that goes beyond award cycles and it goes beyond media cycles. It's something that I think like what was I like this just came to my mind, the "What's up" from like the 90s or whatever that's still referenced to this day, for instance.
I haven't heard of it.
It's like, oh my god, when they're like I think it's like a Pepsi ad. I'm really like blanking on it, but they were like, "What's up?" But like even things like I don't know, like even like the like McDonald's jingle or something like that.
Yeah,
It's like that is famous. Or the Coca-Cola like polar bear. Like all of those things are just like
it transcends
famous.
time. Yeah.
Yeah, they become a part of Americana really, and I think that that's what really famous work does.
Oh my god, you really need to put like in the shoes of I want to create culture, Like it's so interesting.
Yeah, and I think that really, I mean, that is ultimately the goal of really famous work to create culture, to become something that transcends and, it will outlive you in a way.
Yeah. Wow. And like you have moved pretty fast, from intern to ACD across top agencies. Like,
Yeah.
what's a creative instinct that you trust now that you didn't trust earlier in your career?
Oh my gosh, this is a really kind of generic answer, but trust your gut
Yeah,
always because
absolutely.
it's something that earlier on I remember. So I was at Saatchi for about probably around 2.5, 3 years, and that was really where I learned a ton. But it was sort of really early in my career where I was, things that were like, oh, I should speak up, but oh, I don't know if I'm comfortable doing that yet. Or oh, I should do this. I don't know if I'm comfortable doing that. Like oh, I should advocate for this, but I don't know if I'm comfortable. Like like I think this is a struggle with a lot of like young creatives. Like you find that you'll feel like, oh, I don't know if I'm ready to do this or that, or I don't know if I can advocate for myself in this space. And my advice is like always trust your gut and go with what it's saying. Like if it's telling you to speak up in a room, go for it. Like I think that that's something that I learned pretty early on is like you have to always be your best advocate and trust the process and everything. And I think that throughout my career, there's been so many moments now where, to my detriment at times, even I feel like I say what's on my like that I'm feeling, and it's very much like, look, like I'm feeling this sort of way. I like we need to do X, Y, and Z or whatever. And so I think you just always have to trust it because even when it comes to career shifts, like oh my gosh, yeah, I've been in a lot of shops now, but it's also this thing where like every single time I always felt it inside me that no, like trust the process. You're gonna learn something by doing this. And every single place I've ever been at, been taught an incredible amount of things that have completely changed me over the years and like made me a much stronger creative and a better creative leader and a better even like I think just like mentor and everything for people.
Yeah. I find that really fascinating because it is so simple, you know. It's such a simple advice, like trust your
Mhm.
instinct, but it's so powerful. Like I truly think people um sort of, how do you say this word? Oh my god, my uh people don't people take for granted the power that comes from,
Mhm.
you know, following your gut and your intuition.
Yeah.
I mean, it will take you where you need to be, you know. Um
Exactly.
it's
And
like,
I think that and with a lot of the time too, I think that it's something where that relationship between like the mind, the gut, and your whole body is actually so powerful where like it's crazy how if you're feeling off about something or stressed out about something, it'll affect your entire body, really.
absolutely. I love the idea of following your gut creatively. I feel like it's such a, you know, like simple, or you can say like basic, but
Mhm.
no, like it's so powerful. So, so powerful.
Yeah.
Especially with so much noise going on, you know? And sort of,
And
yeah, like stimulation. And it's like, no, I know. Like my center will guide me.
And I think actually you bring up such a great point because there is so much distraction in the world and everything. And I do think that something that I always look at as well is like something that I appreciate a lot with creatives is when they are very decisive and when they have a point of view. And I think that comes from trusting your gut because there can be a million different voices in a room, and then if you just intuitively know what the vision is and know the decision and are able to act on it.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And you have also mentioned that it's not about the best looking work, you know?
Mhm.
So have you ever seen an ugly idea
Mhm.
win because the thinking was just that strong?
All the time, and actually, I love this because I teach my students this a lot as well, where, like, this is interesting because, the class I teach, for instance, in that setting, it's, a lot of design students, and they're taught the entire time, like, we need to make gorgeous, visually stunning
Mhm.
work, etcetera, and then they come to my class, I'm like, "I do not care how it looks, I just care about the thinking," and that's actually where, like, their idea is, like, they have to unlearn, and it's like, there's so many good ideas that I see on pages, and it's like, yeah, that's amazing. Like once you take, because actually, this is the thing I think about in terms of like the ugly ideas winning. It's this thing where like all you really need sometimes is one piece of swipe on a thing to help communicate it and stuff. Like again, like I would prefer to see like a messy write up even that has an inkling of something really exciting because after that we can bring that to life in through visuals, through copy, through other things. And but in that moment of like finding a core of an idea, a nugget that's really exciting, it can be as ugly. It can be a sketch on a notepad. Like it can be whatever you want it to be. It doesn't have to be anything elaborate.
Yeah. And if you dropped into a team tomorrow and
Mhm.
everything they were making felt safe, like what's the first thing you'd push them to change?
Oh my gosh, yeah, this is an interesting one because I mean, I love creative risk taking. I actually really love like when I give teams feedback and stuff or when I'm looking for ideas, I really kind of go by this like 80-20 kind of philosophy of like, look, if you make 80% of it all like to the brief, like we know it's sellable, we know it's everything. I will really want to see the area that I get really excited about is the 20% that pushes that boundary and thinks about that problem, the brief, or unexpected lens. Maybe it's like an inkling of a different audience or community, or if it's through social, maybe it's like a really out there sort of idea that, yeah, we'll work on workshopping it to get it to be more sellable and exciting. But those are kind of the types of thinking when it's a little unconventional, a little like different from what a client might be expecting, that I think oftentimes strengthens the relationship and the business overall, because all of a sudden, they're seeing why they hired you as an agency and everything and as a team, because they're seeing, oh my God, there is some creative brilliance here. That's like, if we want, like, maybe there's some compromise, but like, if they go that way, oh my gosh, it's something pretty exciting and unexpected. So I always like to, with teams, have at least 20% of the like ideas and stuff that they bring forward be a little unexpected and push them to,
Yeah.
because I think that also that helps, like if everything is feeling really safe, I guarantee you that the creatives also feel like everything is too safe. And a creative is always thinking, always excited about something, and it's kind of pushing them of like, okay, what excites you? Let's get to know you. Like, let's push that forward, you know?
Yeah. And there's a lot of noise in social right now.
Mm.
What's one creative trend you think is overplayed and one that's still massively underutilized?
Ooh, oh my gosh. Okay, with social specifically, I feel like, so it's funny because I've been working actually recently a lot on trend jacking, and I think that actually what I notice is that, oh my goodness, it's like this thing where I think trend jacking actually, if I'm being quite honest, I think trend jacking is the thing that's overplayed, because there'll be, a moment, and then every single brand will want to latch onto it, even if it's inauthentic to them. Like sometimes it's playful and just silly, like more of a community management angle, like Group 7 or something, like when that blew up on TikTok.
Nice.
And like, yeah, it's like, okay, fine, like jump on it. But like, we got to the burger wars, and then all of a sudden there were people, like brands that had nothing to do with burgers, that were posting about it, like, here's our CEO eating a chopped salad of some sort. And I'm like, we've lost the plot, like, come on, like at that point it's not even like authentic. And to me, like, social is a really interesting landscape, because audiences can immediately fish out when something just feels off and when something doesn't feel authentic. And I think that when brands are trying to transact too much and will take on any and all opportunities to do so, to the point that it feels like inauthentic to them, that's when it's like very much like, okay, nope. And then their trust falls online. People don't really go to them online and everything. It becomes a whole thing.
Yeah.
And in terms of something that more brands should do, I really believe in like the Nutter Butter kind of thing, where like they had just the wildest idea of transforming their TikTok into like the most unhinged, like wild
Another
Gen Z brain. Yeah, the brain rot of it all. Like it truly, like they understood TikTok and they understood Gen Z and that audience, and they understood brain rot, and they understood all these cultural tropes that were so, so brilliant. And most brands were way too scared to touch. And then all of a sudden they launched this amazing TikTok account that is full of all these memes that are so ridiculous. And that takes a lot of braveness and creativity and in a brand to do. And I think a lot of authenticity, and they stood out like across all the noise of everyone else. Like that account stands out. It's so uniquely them and their persona and everything. And I think that's really special. And I think it's something that's, when you're just chasing trends, you're never going to become the trend that they became.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my God, Nutter Butter, good for them.
It was great. I don't know if they still do that strategy, but, at the time it was brilliant.
Ooh, good for them taking creative risks. I love it.
Mm.
And like if you had to kill one habit that's quietly making creative work worse across the industry right now, what would it be?
Ooh, I think this is something that, oh my gosh, I mean, do I say the AI of it all? Like it is like one of those, but actually no, I do find that AI can be incredibly useful if used correctly and everything. So, but I think actually the one habit I would say creatives should stop doing is, I think that sometimes, and this goes back to, I think, a core theme of what I've been saying is, I think a lot of times that creatives don't trust themselves in the process,
Mm.
and I think that they don't trust their own voice. And I've experienced this in the past where I've seen a lot of creatives like ladder every single decision up the chain, like overly so to the point where they like lose all of their own voice in the process, and then the work it becomes like I don't really even understand where the ownership goes in the work, and it's really kind of unfortunate because I think that it's a habit that I don't know, I think it comes from not trusting your gut and, like, that intuition a bit, and I think that more creatives should just, like, own their story, own their,
Yeah.
like, their vision, and, it doesn't have to be this endless cycle of, "What do you think of this and this and this?" It's like, "Just give me a vision, give me something to react to."
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, you clearly care about making things that stick, you know?
Mhm.
So, what's the last idea you saw that made you think like, "Damn, I wish I made that"?
Oh my gosh, the last idea that I was like, "Oh," that would actually be there were these recent Spotify, I think they were just print ads, and they were promoting actually, and this is like not even a social idea, it's literally just a brilliant print idea. It was promoting like ad-free streaming on Spotify, and it has this photo of like goosebumps on someone's arm, and then the ad plays, and then boom, it's like shaved, and then all of a sudden, like the music starts, and then it's goosebumps.
No.
And I love it so much. That's brilliant. It's simple. It's communicating an idea so simply. And I saw those ads and I was like, "Oh my god, I really wish I would have thought of that. That's actually brilliant." Like I love the message is so simple to understand and it works so beautifully and it's photographed so gorgeously as well and it just like I felt it actually because like for me I have such a personal relationship with like when I work I always make soundtracks to every project that I
Oh,
work on.
that's so
I like
cool.
music is just like I think in music a lot, and so it's like literally like I just felt that campaign so hard when I saw it. I was like, "Oh, this gets me so much."
But oh my god, wait, walk me through that. Like, so you are creating, you're working on a brief, and you're gonna create a playlist based on that brief, or how does that work?
Yeah, it's sort of like a mix of a lot of things with it. So, I'll get a brief and I start to create a playlist that relates to that for sure, but also more generally where my thought process is going and stuff. So, like, for instance, I used to work on Las Vegas. And so when I did that, it was so fun when I was getting a project. Like, for instance, I would then be like, okay, so I'm feeling like Bonnie and Clyde and like this old, like, Elvis record and all these other kind of interesting things. And then maybe this like electronic jazz can fit into it a little bit. And it's like curating my thought process through songs that relate to everything I'm expressing in my mind while interpreting a brief because it's like I feel like that helps me condense my thoughts and understand what I'm trying to think.
I love that. And I feel like music also sometimes like it invites us, it invokes so much
Mhm.
emotions, you know, and I feel like emotions just go so well with creativity, you know?
Yeah, and it's really funny. I think like I remember I've always been doing that. And then like one time there was a creative director and I forgot how this came up, but I mentioned something like that and then they were like, "Oh, but it's really bad to like think with music in your head." I'm like, "No, no, no, trust me, it's not. It's like the best thing ever."
Oh my god. And I always like to close with this question because
Mhm.
we know like the power of a good mentor, you know, the power that a good
Mm.
mentor can have on your trajectory. So I was wondering if you had like some mentors that you wanted to give a shout out to who really shaped how you show up in the world.
Oh my goodness, I would actually love that. Yeah. Okay, so first and foremost, I think Tom Chirico, who I worked with at Twitter, he is absolutely a legend. He is incredible. And he really was, I think, the guy that kind of got me to because at the time I was really focused a lot on visual like and design and stuff like that. And I never like he was the one person that really saw that, oh my gosh, I see how you are with writing and with creative strategy and really believed in me. And we were walking on the High Line one day and he was like, you can do this other career path if you want, but I think you're going to get tapped out really quickly. I think you're going to kind of not be super happy. Like, how do you feel about just really leaning into creative brand strategy? And I was like, I want to do that so much. So that was incredible. And I think I owe him so much in terms of my career and everything. and then actually from the very first summer I was over in FCB, oh my goodness, I'm blanking on. Hold up, one sec. It's Brie and Anjali, and then there was this creative pair called the Raccoons, and then this guy named Alex. They were all incredible people, and from my first summer in New York, that just taught me so much. And then, oh my God, this is fun giving shout outs. Actually, I really love it. I'm thinking of like Atsachi, this amazing she's a design director there. Oh my God. Why am I like so bad with names? Agatha San. Oh my gosh, she's incredible. And yeah, I mean, I think that just like so many incredible people I've gotten the pleasure of working with. I think to end the shout out section, one of my dear friends, Rohan Rutroy, who is a strategist, and I will never forget this. This is like ideal how you become best friends with me is we were working together on a pitch for Target, and at the time we were like remote, so we had a working session at his apartment, and it was very much like putting ideas on a like sticky notes on the wall. And I remember literally like I just disagreed with something like an idea he had, and I disagreed really hard with it. And I was like, no, I disagree. Here is my reason why. And he literally was like, no one has ever done that. Like, that's, yeah, I respect that. Hell yeah. And because I was like the first person to disagree with him so much on something, like we ended up like that created the best working relationship
Oh,
ever. And then we became like inseparable work buddies. And now we're just like best of friends, honestly.
that's so cool. That's so cool that you've had so many amazing people influence you.
Yeah, and I'm probably forgetting quite a few as well. So if anyone is listening, apologies in advance. But yeah,
This must be what like an Oscar speech feels like, you know? You're
I
like
know which. Yeah.
trying to remember everyone.
And trust me, I've been practicing my Oscar speech since I was a kid. That is actually my main dream in life is to one day be a filmmaker as well. And so it definitely like I'm like now like, oh my God, I'm gonna do horribly in the moment of winning an Oscar
You
someday.
can start practicing.
Yeah.
Well, this was such a fun conversation. You're
Yeah.
such a lovely, cool, smart human being. I feel like we covered so much ground, and honestly, I could keep going. Like, thanks so
I
much for
know I could do this all day. This is fun.
this was super fun, genuinely. Such a good
Thank
way
you.
to start my Tuesday. Um
Thanks.
yeah, just thank you so much for all your insights. You're such a cool human being, and I'm so excited to
Thank
see,
you.
what's coming for you.
Thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure being here and chatting all things creativity. Well, so I'm very happy.
I love it.
It's brought to you by Penji. Check out the show notes to learn more about today's guest. And to learn more about Penji, the human first creative subscription service, head over to penji.co. And by the way, if you're still listening, it would mean the absolute world to us if you were to share this podcast with a friend and, of course, subscribe.